My name is Eliana Park. I'm a senior journalism major with an emphasis in visual media. And my presentation is on three key aspects of what I think is imperative to the nature of a story that impacts and affects movement, not simply told and received. So empathy, story, change. Empathy is the ability to understand another's feelings and life experiences, and I believe that's done through the power of story. A story that is equally communicated from the receiver's end and the giver's end. And this allows for a depth and growth and perspectives in the possibility to do something with that change of information that's given, and that's change. You see, these three words are action words that I think are inseparable from each other. You feel, you share, you receive, you live, and you do. The power to cultivate and create culture rests a mere arm's length away now. The platform being the glass screens in our phones, and our voice being our advocacy. We have the power to connect with the rest of the world, bringing light to the darkness and hope to the hopeless. Those cracks and crevices in the world are not so hard to get to anymore. Do these photos mean anything to you? Because they probably don't right now. But these are snippets of the summer of 2017 that transport me back to the fragrance of roasted grains, of laughter in a kitchen where we learned to make boats, of encounters and friendships that happened on the Trans-Siberian Railroad, and the voices of Vasily and Galina as they sang songs glorifying God in their native Buryat language. These images hold real-life experiences that forever altered the way I viewed the gift of hospitality, redefined what it meant to invite foreigners to your homes and being a foreigner in a different area, and the relationships that could be built under 24 hours, what it means to follow God to the ends of the earth with this good news. While there was a large language barrier, the translation through the missionaries, the universal language of mirth, and the community of those dwelling at the feet of Jesus changed the way I viewed the platform of storytelling. You see, the photo of the grains wasn't just a good photo op. They tell of the process of being harvested and handpicked, being roasted to deepen the flavor and the aroma, being crushed and mixed into a dough that was then made for lunch. And in the same way, storytelling requires the same patience in an intimate process of inviting one another, of getting your hands dirty and understanding the cultures and the backgrounds and the upbringing of those with the people you're doing that with. The lady on the left who's taking a sip from a cup, her name is Dajit, and she had heard that 6 foreigners were coming to her hometown, and she found out that one of them had lived in Mongolia for a few years. As I was in the kitchen, she walked in and she said, "Chi Mongoltun," which means, "Are you a Mongolian person?" And it was that question which I am not a Mongolian person, there was that desire to have a connection with someone you've never met prior. And that led into an amazing, amazing relationship and story of exchange through flipping through dictionaries and photographs, trying to get to each other's stories. So I want to ask again, do these photos mean anything to you? Because the contents and context, initially unknown and unfelt, can have the possibility to become an encounter that leads to some kind of human experience and connection. You know these names, and you know a little bit about Dajit, and you know a little bit about the context of summer of 2017. Over the course of my time pursuing visual narration, I've kept these 4 words as a guiding compass: creativity, communication, culture, and collaboration. 2 months after my 10th birthday, my family packed up our lives in plastic boxes and large black luggages, and we flew to the capital of Mongolia to live for 5 years. And it was there where I just felt such a frustration and silencing of my inability to communicate with certain people beyond just a mere conversational level. How was I supposed to connect with someone else when a certain language barrier was there? And it was there that I picked up something like photography, where my camera was no longer just to take pretty photos, it was to capture moments that I viewed great movements happening and great relationships deepening. It was visual narration that helped me find the language to my own experiences. And it's my passionate pursuit now to use that to help give language to others' real-life experiences. The National Press Photographers Association defines the quality of photojournalism by strength of story, a genuine moment, rare access, and a perspective on what's happening in the world. Visual media is the first impression offered, the responsibility to have people stick around for what's important and to care where there needs to be care. And through the reality and perspective conveyed, visual storytelling cultivates a certain kind of culture. So we have this good news as Christians, but we also have this good news as journalists, that we have been equipped to go out with the stories and the responsibilities that we have to carry on these stories, to meet people in those hard places and to go where there needs to be a voice. Yusuf Omar is a foreign correspondent, co-founder of #OurStories. And he said this really great quote, "Reality is the new quality." What he meant by that was that he documented the Syrian civil war for an extensive amount of time using just his phone. And what he found out as he produced this documentary to the public was that people didn't care that the sound was off or that the frames were shaky, because it told of the reality that people were not giving attention to. And so he urges journalists that they are already equipped to stories that need telling, that they are already equipped with the ability to understand and to encounter real life stories. So the role of emotion is pretty powerful when it comes to stories and when it comes to visuals. Visuals is a universal language that kind of transcends languages that are in words and articles alone. And the Columbia Journalism Review came out with an amazing article on the power of emotions in storytelling and journalism. Jacob Riis, the photojournalist of the late 1800s, used photography to show how the other half of New York lived, and you might be familiar with that. He went into the darkness of the slums, neighbors to the affluent and the arrogant, and illuminated the reality with this great new photographic concoction. A burst of light came when he snapped the shutter, and he was able to tell the story because that's what he experienced himself. He experienced poverty and what it meant to be penniless. He experienced what it meant to be an immigrant and not welcome. And so Jacob Riis had empathy on his side, and that was the platform that allowed him to tell a greater story. And in kind of the same way, we're able to use these things like empathy, the transportation theory, and experience sharing to navigate beyond just geographic borders or language that is, isolated to only one person. It goes beyond that because we are then able to tell the stories that connect human connection on multiple platforms. So the role of emotion in a movement might be downplayed at some times and overemphasized in other times, but the reality is that emotion holds the power to influence at all. In a world where influence is now a paid position, the misplaced importance and emphasis is possibly what one questions its ascent. However, we have the opportunity as people who have the good news to advocate by first attending to the stories of others, because people will always be the purpose. And in this idea of culture, as people who have this good news, to go out into the world to tell this good news, this idea of culture is going to the place where people are, not where we want them to be. Christianity Today says contextualization involves an attempt to present the gospel in a culturally relevant way, which cyclically and intimately involves emotion, behavior, and action, culture. And so the ethics of the story, some of these are called, we are called to truth's duty. We are to showcase diversity. We are to extend the invitation. And is that not what we are called to do as Christians, first and foremost? The story of hope, that which we as Christians have in hand, is powerful, transformative, meaningful, and relevant when we know the person we're telling the good news to. It changes the game, it changes the way we approach evangelism, and it changes the way we approach others with our handheld platform. Thank you.